What is up? Greetings. Is my audio working? I hope so. What's up, Father Axe Keeper, Space Hoppercopter, Gygrim, lurkers in chat, VOD viewers, etc., etc. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to what should be the finale of 007 Nightfire for the Windows PC. I am eager to see if stream will operate smoothly tonight. We've had some technical issues recently, or rather some ongoing technical issues that have been kind of flaring up a little bit lately. But I am excited to announce, to bring up that I actually did a little bit of research on this subject over my lunch break today, and lo and behold, I actually did find some information, clarification, I don't know. So for those of you who haven't been around, been fortunate enough not to be around for these ongoing issues, one, or really more realistically two, of my 3 internal SSDs have been acting up. One a lot more so than the other, to the point where I mainly considered an issue with one drive, but I technically have seen it happen with the other one also, where it's the disk activity just shoot up to 100% for no obvious reason and just stays there for sometimes quite prolonged periods of time. And I've been having this issue for several months now, off and on, and at some point in the past I did try to research and dig into it and figure out what was going on, and I wasn't really able to find any satisfying answers. But it seems as if there have been more ongoing discussions about this particular issue with these particular drives, because when I was looking into it kind of on a whim today, or I mean, not so much on a whim, I guess, is prompted by issues we've been having on Monday and previously, I actually found a few discussion threads that actually had some information, not only the very immediate and obvious fact that I'm apparently not alone in having these issues. I had people describing pretty much the exact same scenario. Although obviously for some people, they'd been using this drive as their system drive. So if your operating system is running on this drive while it's like locking up, it's obviously going to impact things quite a bit more severely. So my symptoms weren't exactly identical to some of those people, but by and large, it appears that I found people discussing this exact same thing happening. And I didn't find some kind of miracle solution, but I found somewhat of an explanation that seemed to describe why this thing was happening. And some people had been basically saying that they reinstalled Windows and it fixed it. Some people said they'd formatted the drive and it fixed it. And basically what I've come to learn, or at least the ongoing working theory, is that this issue is kind of inherent to these drives. It's a Kingston drive, so I'm basically never buying one of those again. And I mean, that's kind of the general advice I was able to find sort of boiled down to, like, yeah, don't buy this piece of shit. Like, spend a few extra bucks on something better, and you know, you can sleep easy. And that was kind of the end of it. But even that, like, knowing that it's not, or at least know is a strong word, but having reason to believe that it is nothing wrong with my PC, like, having to replace a SSD is annoying, but it's a lot less annoying than replacing a motherboard or, you know, other weird freak issues. So I'm at this point, like, because before I knew that this was like a seemingly common thing, I didn't feel a lot of faith in buying a new drive, because if it's something with the socket or the motherboard or something else, it sucks if you're out $200 on a new SSD and it doesn't work any better. Like, that would kind of suck. But the other thing is, apparently these issues tend to be exacerbated or kind of only crop up once the drive is filled to a certain amount. So a lot of people described what I experienced as well, which was the drive operated perfectly fine for several months, but seemingly once, you know, it starts getting filled up, you start having more issues, which would kind of explain that, well, if you do a format, you clean it out, you know, then it probably would run better for a while, you know? So I don't trust that any reinstalling or formatting or anything is a permanent fix, but it was still a relief to be able to find any kind of information about it. So I am already taking some measures to see if we can have things run more smoothly, but I also have somewhat of a plan of I'll be buying a new drive at some point, and I'll probably migrate some files. I'll probably try to keep this like half empty, this one drive, not keep anything crucial on it, but also while I'm at it, probably format it, because why not? It's not gonna hurt. And I'll keep it, as maybe a storage drive, just for something where I don't really need access speeds, or hopefully nothing is being like, even if it would have this issue, like currently there have been things that are like, right now my Dropbox is on that drive, and even if nothing is actively being written, I could see there being some kind of activity. I have other things, like a lot of, like I mentioned, not OBS and not the game I'm streaming, but plenty of other things related to the stream was running off of this drive. So if there's an issue that sort of prevents the disk from being read from or written to, things are just gonna basically pause until there's a response, and that will make stuff kind of lock up. And my best guess is that would create some kind of chain reaction, which eventually impacts my my GPU, because that had, like, the GPU gets sort of the encoding gets overloaded or whatever, because there's something that can't be written or read. I don't know. But basically, if nothing ever is like being randomly written or read because it's just like cold storage, I guess probably that should be fine. But if I can, jettison the drive entirely and just not use it at all, probably the best solution. In any case, I was just really happy to find any updates on it, because as I mentioned, when I researched this in the past or tried to, I didn't come up, like, I learned a few interesting things, but I never once actually found discussion about the specific scenario that I'm in with these specific drives. And now that I have, I feel like I have a much better grasp on the situation, and that's great. But on top of that, speaking of those intermittent sort of measures I've been taking, I have now moved, or duplicated rather, a lot of my stream configuration type stuff. So a lot of small things like images and videos and stuff that would be used in overlays on the stream, or even just that little thing right there, the now playing thing, that's a text file being written by a plugin in Winamp that used to be written to the D drive and being read from that drive by OBS. But all of those little things I've now migrated over to my system drive, which is my, like, reliable SSD. So now that, as far as I'm aware, nothing related to OBS or the stream is being in contact or trying to interact with this problematic disk drive. I'm eager to see if we can have a smooth stream. Now, obviously, just because, or if we have a stream with none of these issues, that doesn't really tell us anything, because if the issue doesn't crop up, then I don't know how badly I'm impacted by it if it does. Best case scenario, I'll keep an eye on my task manager, and if I see the D drive like go crazy with 100% activity, but my stream is not affected at all, then that's perfect. Because that means I don't have to worry about it. If the issue doesn't crop up, I mean, it's better than if it does, but it won't give me any conclusive answers either way, really. So it continues to be an ongoing weird thing that I have to deal with, but I've taken some measures that I'm curious to see if they will have an effect. Hell, even if the issues come back up again and disk activity shoots up to 100% and stream reacts just as it used to, if that's the case, then I know that shifting this stuff over to my C drive didn't really have an effect, which is, That's data, that's knowledge, and it's valuable in its own right. So, knock on wood, with a little luck, we might get through this stream without any... well, I shouldn't say without any issues, but without that one particular issue at least. Hopefully. So, on tonight's stream then, we shall pick up where we left off last time. We were at the, presumably, end of the 8th mission, I believe, in Nightfire PC, with the 9th to follow. And these last couple of levels have been about an hour or so long. So, once we get into the game, we'll finish up mission 8. And we'll get through mission 9 and finish the game, hopefully. And we should have enough time over by the end of things to properly look over the spreadsheet, update the game list, and collect all the data, document everything necessary for the bond quotient calculations and all that. So that's the objective for tonight. Finishing up Nightfire PC. And on that note, why don't we hop on over to the bond scene? Let me hydrate as well. We are indeed playing Nightfire for the PC. This has been a game of ups and downs, but I feel like that middle stretch of the Japan levels was by far the most obnoxious the game's been. Even when we had to deal with extremely tanky elite guards that survived like direct hits from grenades, the levels were cooler. Like, I was impressed and surprised by how visually kind of interesting and cool the Drake's like underground or underwater rather HQ villainous lair type level was, because the equivalent one was so boring in the console game. And just again, the whole tropical island setting, the PC game does so much more with it than the console game does.
Look, you!
Spaghetti Pocket. That's pretty good. Thank you very much for the follow. So, even though like the shooting isn't as good, there's a lot of annoying stuff. The levels are kind of too large and too long and kind of a little annoying. The game isn't overall as like riveting and exciting as the console game. I feel compared to what I felt about halfway through, you know, it's redeeming itself somewhat. I think once we're finished with the game, going over everything, kind of attempting to piece together where we feel like this should end up in terms of, you know, tier list ranking, it's not going to be super easy to call. And we already kind of had this issue most recently when we caught up on games for the tier list. Having the like A and B tiers getting pretty clogged up with a lot of games, because there's been very few games that really stand out on either extreme of the spectrum, and we're almost certainly going to have to add at least one new tier so that not everything ends up being like on the same level. And I feel comfortable saying this doesn't deserve to go as high as the console version. I think that's the more interesting and cooler game all around. I have at times felt confident that this should end up one tier below, and other times I've felt confident that it should end up 2 tiers below. And now I'm unsure, but it also depends on what either of those relative tiers are kind of defined as and what they consist of. So we're gonna have to do some serious thinking about that when it comes to it. Have I played Everything or Nothing? No, I have not. So if you're new to this project, what we're doing is we're playing every game in chronological order, and Everything or Nothing will be coming down the line but we have several games in between now and then. But as far as my previous experience, I basically have not played anything past the point we're at now. James Bond: The Duel for the Mega Drive was a game I owned as a child. Nightfire, the console version, I own still, but I got it for the Xbox back in the day in like 2003. And I dabbled very lightly in GoldenEye for the N64. But those games are pretty much the extent of my previous experience with James Bond video games before doing this project. Well, I guess I'd played Operation Stealth a little bit, getting absolutely nowhere in it. But for all intents and purposes, almost everything we're doing is me going in blind. The upcoming slate of like console Bond games is I'm actually super excited about, because I think a lot of the games coming up, some of them have like pretty, I mean, I think Nightfire is a game that has a very good reputation. Agent Under Fire, I think, has a surprisingly good reputation. Surprising both in that I don't recall people really talking about it until I was like researching it now, but also I don't feel like it's super deserving of it. It's an okay game, but it's very lackluster in many ways. But I think basically everything coming up, like, it's going to be interesting. I don't think we're gonna, well, okay, I was gonna say I don't think we're gonna have any real stinkers. I think Rogue Agent is gonna be terrible, and I did actually play like 30 minutes of that when I bought it 1 or 2 years ago. But like Everything or Nothing, From Russia with Love, Quantum of Solace, Bloodstone, I have to expect that all of them are going to be like at least pretty decent. They're all going to have like pretty good production values, and some of them, if not most of them or all of them, are made by like fairly, if not prestigious developers, at least developers with pretty solid track records. So I think like my expectation for this entire project have not really been accurate, but you know, I expected the original stretch of British microcomputer games to be a bit of a nightmare, but that wasn't really the case. And I figured kind of once we get into the post GoldenEye like 3D PS2 onwards like Bond action game, that the average level of quality and average level of let's call it frustration and challenge is going to be such that playing through a game is going to be a matter of perseverance more so than skill. I don't consider myself particularly skilled in action games or any games really, and I always, when it comes to these things, even though I don't put too much of a focus on beating the games, if we can, that's great, that's what I want to do, but it's more about exploring the games and what they have to offer. But if I get stuck on something because it's too difficult, that always makes me anxious, because it means like, well, I would have liked to have seen it, but if we can't, that's a bit of a problem. And sometimes we've been able to kind of cheat our way through or use passwords, or, you know, maybe even watch long play videos or something just to kind of get a glimpse at what we might have missed. But it's obviously the most satisfying if I can complete it myself. And I can deal with stuff being boring. I can deal with games being bad. That's not gonna stop me from progressing. But if a game is too frustrating or too difficult, like that, I take more issue with. And I think just broadly, not speaking specifically about James Bond obviously, but video games, console video games, once you reach a certain point in time, I would say around the mid 2000s, you kind of expect to not have to worry about that. And I don't know if that's going to be the case. I think certainly when it comes to mobile games and handheld games, things might work out a little bit differently. And my expectations, as mentioned, have not always been totally accurate, but I mean, we've had some difficulty spikes that I wasn't really expecting. Where other games have been kind of simpler than I would have thought. So I don't know, but I think between like the general competence and quality being relatively high, and probably the level of sort of challenge, frustration, like impediment, or whatever you would call it, being relatively low. Like, I expect things to be a little more relaxing, but that's just speculation, really. Knights with the Fox, thank you very much for following as well. Welcome, welcome. Anyway, we will shortly get into Nightfire. I also do want to quickly mention that we do have more games to play outside of the official list of 50 games. We do have a series of bonus games, some secret additional missions, and they will be unlocked by the Q Branch Research Funding Initiative. Help fund Q Branch, help unlock the games by contributing to the channel by means of subbing, cheering, buying merch, donating, etc., etc. All of those kinds of contributions will contribute to the research fund, and 1 bit will equal 1 credit. And if we reach 1,000 credits, meaning 1,000 bits or 4 subs or whatever that would mean for merch sales, I think they're pretty they give quite a few credits. I forget how that works exactly, the exact figures of it, but basically if you manage to donate a collective couple of dollars, we should be able to reach 1,000 credits, at which point we will clear a daily objective. Clear 10 daily objectives, and we will unlock the next secret mission. We currently are at 3 objectives completed, 7 to go. With that, I do believe we have covered all the important information. I've got my timer up and everything. I believe we are good to go with booting up the game. All right, get to it. I believe this capture should be set up and working. Yep, looks like it.
EA Games.
Challenge everything.
Oh yeah, audio is going to be loud while it's playing these FMVs before it figures out it's supposed to load settings to adjust levels, but we should be fine.
Don't love me quietly. Do it with intensity.
There we go, music just immediately dips in volume. What's up, Knights with the Fox? Rogue Agent is your favorite? That I would say that classifies as a pretty spicy hot take. I mean, we're all about hot takes over here. I have my share of unpopular opinions when it comes to what games are good or not. And I mean, I hope to find things to enjoy about that game. I know that the game has a reputation for being terrible, and that's not something that I usually like. I don't care. If I want to play it, I want to play it, and I don't get like scared off by games having poor reputations. We've even had stuff, you know, before I did all the Bond games a couple of years ago, I did a similar project where we played every Batman game, and there were some games in that list that were like famously terrible, and people were like very vocal about how bad those games were going to be and how painful of an experience it would be for me to play them, and it didn't really map out that way. And some games that people love, I just didn't really care for. And with Bond, the one game that I think elicited the most like preemptive oh, I'm sorry you have to go through this kind of comments was 007 Racing for the PS1. And I actually thought that game was pretty awesome. Like, it had some terrible difficulty spikes and a few missions were very awkward, and it's a very kind of, the game feels kind of low budget and clunky and weird in some ways, but it was fun. I really enjoyed it. Like, the variety in levels and everything was, I was very impressed with some of the stuff. For what kind of a game I felt like it probably was, it impressed me in ways I didn't expect. Now, I don't know that I expect Rogue Agent to really blow me away, because like I said, I did buy the game a few years ago, and when I did, that was before I had started this project, but I bought it kind of secretly with this project in mind. I played it for a bit, and as far as I can recall, I didn't finish the first level. And I think that was through a combination of I didn't spend much time with it, because I wasn't like starting a playthrough. It was just like, hey, I bought some games, let's check them out. So I played it for maybe, 30 minutes to an hour or something. So I think it was a combination of I was already, kind of jumping between games, but also I wasn't enjoying myself much. I was like, I'm pretty ready to move on. So I think I'm looking forward to it in the sense that it's like a pretty infamous game. So it'll be interesting to see if it sort of lives up to its reputation, or if it's, not as bad as people say, or wherever it ends up. Because we've had some games that were pretty impressive in their badness in ways I wasn't expecting. And overall, I think most games have been fun. Most games have been enjoyable. Some games have had frustrating aspects to them, but I haven't felt like I regretted taking on this project, if we put it that way. I guess you could argue that some games got reasonably close. I don't know. I mean, I guess I've set these projects up in a way that I won't regret doing them, because I'm not committing to beating every game. So if I run into something that's impossible, I can just move on with my life and be fine. But I haven't felt like the prospect of continuing just feels like a slog, and there's nothing but misery on the horizon. And I don't know if once we start getting into GBA and DS and mobile games, I'll start feeling that way. I don't know what any of those games are like, but yeah, I don't feel terribly concerned, to be honest. Zelante, what's up? What is up? Honestly, I think the closest I've gotten to feeling that kind of misery, is that the word? Is when I was at the very end of the Batman project. When I was in the last stretch of games and I was playing Arkham Knight, Lego Batman 3, Arkham VR, whatever else, like, at that point, the games were getting so long and so kind of tedious to get through. It didn't really matter whether they were good or bad. The excitement of seeing all the different games had kind of worn off, because the last couple of games were all relatively similar and went on for kind of long. Like, even when you had stuff like the Telltale games, it wasn't that I didn't have fun because I didn't enjoy the games, but like I had lost a lot of the excitement for the project itself, because it had started off being so rapid fire, going through all these different games and different genres and different styles from different developers, like, and everything, and then you end up with like 8 games from 2 studios that all follow the same 2 templates, and it's just a lot less interesting that way. But I think Bond will dodge that bullet somewhat, because the games, basically all of the games that made me feel that way in the Batman project are all games that were made after the last Bond game. 007 Legends is the last game on our list, and it was released in 2012, and most of those like kind of tedious games in the Batman project were games that came out after 2012, at which point I think a lot of these bigger games started being a lot more bloated. So hopefully we won't really have to deal with that. But for now, I think we're in a good place. Things are moving forward, things are exciting, and we get to jump between console games and PC games and handheld games and mobile games. So we are definitely going to have a lot of variety. But I digress. Let's start the timer. And let's continue. So, unlike most previous streams here, I actually ended up... I didn't finish the level and save because we were running a bit late. And I wasn't sure how long the level would keep going. And I figured, you know what? We typically get some cutscenes and the mission briefing and everything at the end of a level. And the way this game works, it doesn't allow you to, like, save the game. There's no, like, clean break between levels where you get to save and go back to the menu or anything like that, like in the console games. It just keeps going. So I figured, you know what? If this is at the end of a level, which it ought to be because we're been going for a long time here, then probably we'll get to see the kind of story beats and everything kicking us off into the final level. But yeah, this has been the whole facility HQ infiltration mission. We somehow obtained photographic evidence of missile reassembly despite me not really deliberately taking any photographs, but we got it done. We locked, like we did some kind of override thing to lock shuttle doors and launched missiles, making them like explode when launching while we were still there. I'm not sure how we got out of that, but it ruined Drake's day, so that's good enough for me. But he's like escaping, and Alora McCall, who's on support duty, told us to, hey, Drake's on the run, you need to capture him. I'm pretty sure we are not going to actually find and capture Drake. I think we'll probably find him, but he's probably going to be well on his way to space by the time we catch up. So we are going to infiltrate the shuttle bay, and we're going to go into space to fight him at the end. And that's going to be the final level. That's more or less how things go in the console game, although it is, of course, a little bit different here. And from my understanding, it seems like there will be an actual space mission. I mean, there kind of is in the console game, but it's really only the final boss fight. Do I have a P90? No. I have a lot of grenades and rock... Well, I don't even have that many, but enough, I think. Yeah, the P90 doesn't really have its own niche. But I think... Okay, let me... The weird minigun is, like, really powerful, but it has, like, wind-up time, which makes it kind of awkward. So 100 bullets. I think we'll go with the P90, because I can fire a bit more rapidly, and if we need... I mean, I have a save file here anyway, I guess, so... if I make a mistake, we can go back here. But yeah, so in the console game, the space mission is literally just a boss fight. It's an awesome boss fight. It's a great climax. I love it. It's like maybe one of my favorite levels in the game. But it's not an actual space level. And I forget exactly what it was, but there was something in the manual for the PC game that we read that seemed to indicate that there is an actual mission where you're on a space station and you have to kill dudes. Oh, I guess that's him. Are we that close? All right, okay. She's still around. Yeah, I figured there were too much level. You know what? Fine. Activate. Did I activate it? Oh, I think I did. These guys are pretty buff, as you can see. Okay, I'm no health though. I don't want this Fred. I probably don't want to... I think this is a secure bunker. Oh! Couldn't grab the vest. Okay, what's gonna happen? Okay. It doesn't seem like there was a blast door closing to the security room, so... that didn't seem very secure. Okay, but that was actually a good use of the, of this. So the blast chamber thing is, that's in the console game too, but it's a little different. But yeah, Kiko is here, and she's, like, we have to kind of deal with her, I assume. And that's probably going to play out pretty similarly. But yeah, I was surprised when this cutscene triggered, because I was like, wait, is the level ending? There seemed to be so much more level area left here that seems surprising. And yeah, lo and behold, it's not actually over. Oh, it's the locker door. Got me all caught up. Okay. Seems like it would be a good secure place, maybe.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition.
Okay. That's a little confusing that the door shuts past the blast half. Whoa, shit! I'm out here fighting fucking ninjas. Are these guys ghosts or they're real? I think they're real. I'm not taking damage. The briefcase is shooting at him. You know what? Probably. Get rid of these. That was a bit confusing, but the briefcase was probably a good idea. Oh, I should grab this because I guess I'll. Oh, dude, what the fuck? That did like half my health. I was gonna say like, oh, I'll probably get teleported out of this room. I'll make a quick save. Stop Kiko. I found this equivalent scene very confusing in the console game, and somehow it's like even more confusing here. Yeah, because I think I got that objective in that game also, and it's like stop her, but we were just supposed to stick around and survive. But now we actually get to go up here, so... Oh, there she is.
To the occasion.
All right, we did it. We were quite at the end of the level, and that was actually surprisingly.
James, I'm still patched into Drake's comm system.
Not too bad.
I've intercepted enough radio chatter to learn that Drake's combat troops have overtaken the defense platform. His next move is to upgrade the missiles with the nukes. I've no idea how you put a stop to all this.
We're just parking there. Oh. Let's save. New file. Okay, I'm relieved. I thought the end of that level might have been like, once I saw that we had the whole blast chamber thing to deal with, because that was quite tough in the console game. But here, I don't know. It seems those ninja dudes were just kind of bugging out. But I think what happens is, I think that the briefcase weapon was like just perfect. And I think, Delonte, that kind of answers your question. I've always struggled to like figure out when a good time is to use it, because it's just like a little clunky and awkward. So I think the deal is with that ninja enemy is that they can obviously like warp around and teleport, and I don't know if that's like triggered by you shooting them, but with the briefcase cannon standing there and just firing, it's like they were constantly being shot at, which would then just constantly trigger them warping and teleporting, which in turn means that they didn't really spend any time attacking me. Honestly, the only time I was under real danger was when that ninja was in the security room with me and I wasn't really fighting him off very actively, and he like attacked me with a sword, or he did like a melee attack which did like 60% damage, and then he shot me twice, which did another 25%. But then I didn't really have to do any more fighting after that anyway, so it was fine. I mean, you can't tell when you shoot anyone in this game, you can never tell that you hit them. So for all I know, those guys might have just had 2 million HP and kept getting hit by everything, but it kind of seemed like they were just, I don't know, warping around. But we got through it. That's good enough for me. So one thing that I am a little curious about, and I doubt it's going to come into play in this level coming up, is that the manual talked about a harpoon weapon. There's some kind of weapon that's like described as the only weapon that can be fired underwater. And there was a bit of swimming in one previous level, or it might be just the very early parts of mission 8, but I think it was mission 7 that had a little bit of swimming. So I had assumed that, well, okay, there's got to be a swimming level or a swimming section where we have to use the harpoon gun. But there didn't seem to be. I don't know if there was like some parts of the level that I missed, or my inventory was full, so I was never able to pick up the harpoon gun, or whatever it was. It's not like I'm really clamoring for more swimming sections, but I'm just surprised that it wasn't like a more major part of any of the levels. But now we're in space, and we have to find and eliminate Drake, but also 4 missiles. All right. Oh yeah, the laser's a bit unsatisfying in this. Do I? Yeah. Okay. I don't think that was him, right? He's got like the black and red suit. Now I see. Okay. I was gonna say, I don't think I can jump up. So we got a little bit of spacesuit training because we had to fight against. Oh my god. We had the boss fight against Virgil in the like astronaut training center of the nuclear power plant. Oh shit, okay, I do have some kind of jump jets, I suppose. How do I use it? Oh, there we go, huh? I just jump and hold. Okay. Just dying in slow motion. Notice them dropping their weapons, I guess. Like the beams don't really look and feel like laser beams. The sound's all right, but no interaction here. Oh, they're not very bright, and like the way they move. Oh shit, there is a timer. I don't have any Bond goggles for this level either. Actually, kind of an interesting level then. Use all axes, okay. Just do that. Oh, I see. Ah! That's what I wanted to try to avoid. Diffuse. That's actually pretty cool. Which? Okay. I'm out of jets. Okay, so now what? Are you taking fire? I'm taking fire. Do I have to go back? Lock during launch sequence. And as soon as the timer was introduced, I wasn't expecting to get this first try. But I'm mainly kind of confused. Ah. There we go. Sound didn't play that other time, but that's okay. Oh, I have to pull these one at a time. Is that it? There we go. Could probably like jump over there and pull those levers in the meantime, but yeah. I'm always shocked when this game does things that are like not annoying. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I'm expecting the game to be fully obnoxious at all times.
Self-destruct sequence initiated.
Self-destruct, huh? Find an escape pod. Okay. Everything's just like weirdly simple and quick and not as elaborate as I thought. Reactor core. Okay.
In space, Mr. Bond, no one can hear you scream, except for me.
All right, okay. It's kind of similar to the Virgil fight. Got this weird, like, soldering iron or whatever. Like trying to dodge into the corner. Oh shit, okay. Alright, the charge shot was kind of weird. Probably not really worth using. I was expecting a big ass like railgun blast. Oh, can actually shoot. But again, not getting like very good feedback on when you hit makes it a little awkward. I think him like waving his arms is like him getting hit, but music just stopped. A lot of little aspects that make this feel a bit bootleg. I'm also surprised there aren't like a bunch of enemies swarming, because that would sure make this a little more difficult. I mean, I don't mind exactly. So I'm not sure if he's like smoldering because I shot him with 8,000 lasers, or if that's his like jetpack or whatever, but I think we're making progress. Oh yeah, there is a self-destruct sequence, ostensibly. Pretty sick with Earth in the background, by the way. I didn't really even take notice of that until just now. Looking far away. But he's like not really doing much. I don't know if that's because I'm hitting him or what, but... And the same thing with Rook, like the way the escape pod. I just wanted to see if I could find some jump jet fuel, but hey. Yeah, Drake and Virgil are basically the same. Like they just fly around, and I think I'm hitting them and I feel confused, and then eventually there's going to be a cutscene when they die, and I'm like, okay, that was it, I guess. Just hope it's not actually timed. At least that's the escape pod door, so that's good to know. Oh, is he doing something with those things? Whatever they are. I'm a little underwhelmed, I have to say. I was expecting like a proper big base station mission, but I guess it is just like a brief little thing. That's a brief little climax boss fight, and not nearly as exciting and awesome as the one in the console game. I mean, a lot of that comes down to the guns in general in this not being as fun to shoot. This gun in particular being pretty shit compared to the laser gun in the console game. Now I hope there... Oh, there we go. Drake eliminated. He's still flying around. Okay, I guess he's dead. 20 seconds. Is this a pod? Am I in a pod? Oh, I pressed the button. I didn't want to quick save. I was panicking a bit. All right. Well, that was over a lot faster than I would have thought.
Shaken, not stirred. Or is it stirred, not shaken? Definitely stirred.
Astronomers from around the globe are reporting unexpected meteor showers. Well done, 007.
Then I'm sure the world won't mind my taking a few days off. We'll let the autopilot be our designated driver.
Do we get to... Yeah, that's so funny. Because what happens there, like, that's the underwater car that, like, drives into the ocean. But we don't get to see that part in this game because we're never introduced to the underwater car because that level is not in this game. All right. Well, I'm relieved in a sense. But that was a bit underwhelming. The final showdown was not exciting. Like, as a final boss battle, that was really boring. And even when the final boss dies, it's like it didn't trigger a cutscene or anything. His animation looked like it just bugged out a little bit. And then we had 20 seconds to find the doorway, which I'm glad that I saw where the escape pod door was, or else that might have been an issue. But like, holy shit, if I'd failed the escape pod bit, quick loading to redo that entire boss fight, like, that would have been so annoying because it was so boring. But yeah, thanks for the GGs. We did it. We what do I even want to say? Yeah, the whole final stretch was. I mean, I'm glad I cut the last stream when we did, because we got a little more context for the final level now. And if I'd actually finished the previous level, this would have been even less. You know, it would have been like 5 minutes. Because yeah, the last several levels were all about an hour, so I was expecting a full-sized mission. I don't think we even got a. There wasn't even a mission like debriefing results screen for the final level. Or maybe after this? I don't know. The structure of the final mission, I think, was pretty cool. I think if the laser gun had been fun to shoot, that would have improved things a lot. But the level of difficulty and challenge is so shockingly uneven. Even setting aside the fact that it was very short, the final level was so much easier than, I don't know, like it's almost like the easiest level in the game. I mean, taking into account the length of it, it definitely is the easiest level in the game. The final mission is the shortest level in the console game too, but it's not necessarily super duper easy. And even when it's not super duper difficult, it's engaging because it's exciting, and it's like there's a lot of pressure because you have to simultaneously fight off these dudes while you disable the missiles as they're being fired, and everything's on like timers and everything. But it's weird too that's like the also game talks about like zero gravity missions or whatever. A James Bond will return. That's pretty sick that they had that in the game. We haven't seen that in many games, actually. Dude, I feel like that should... I need to add that to the Bond quotient, I think, because that's obviously a classic thing in the movies. This might be the only time I've seen it in a game. I don't know if it is, but it's the only... I can't think of it being in another game. That's awesome. I like that. And I know the credits are looping, but they can loop while I finish my train of thought. The final mission in the console game is like the only little bit where we get to do the advertised zero gravity mission, because it is straight up, you're in space, and your controls are a little bit different. You have these little like thrusters to fly. And in this game, all you get is, like, there are technically longer parts of the game where you're in the spacesuit, and you have these, like, low-gravity jumps, and the jump pack here in the final level, which wasn't very exciting either. So technically, the final space station level is slightly longer here than in the console version, but there's still obviously not really a full level, and mechanically, conceptually, visually, there isn't even that much that sets it apart. Like the just sheer insanity of Bond just like, fuck it, I'm gonna jump into this shuttle and fly into space to kill the final boss, is a little undercut by the fact that when you're in space, it doesn't look or feel very different from the underwater HQ level. And the music was weird, and the final boss fight was, I thought it was cool that we actually had the fight with Virgil before, earlier in the game, but turns out that like the shootout in the hallway of the console version is like a more exciting showdown with him. Not to mention that it's obvious now that, like, well, okay, they just used the exact same fight. You don't even really see what the character looked like in the spacesuit, so it for all intents and purposes, it's the exact same thing. You have this limp laser gun, and you have to shoot this guy floating around in random directions 8 million times. And that's supposed to be the climax. Whereas in the console version, you fight off these dudes in space, you stop the missiles, all while the villain is like giving a speech to you and like taunting you. And then at the very end, there's like, once you've stopped all the missiles, the entire missile launching thing is like imploding, and the whole station like starts exploding, and he like joins you out in space. You have this final little shootout. That's, I don't know, that's just top tier final boss climax. So I wasn't expecting this to live up to it, but I thought it would have a cool final mission instead to kind of make up for it. And unfortunately, that wasn't really the case. But there we go. That's officially time. 8 hours, 26 minutes, 57 seconds. Game would have been a 10 out of 10 if it had a cheat code that lets you drive a forklift. I mean, it wouldn't have made the game worse, I'll say that much. Well, we certainly have more than ample time to look into some spreadsheets. More time than I expected, but that's fine. We won't get started on the next game tonight because I don't have everything set up. I wasn't expecting to finish this soon with this one. But we'll go over that in a moment. For now, let's quit. And let's get some other music going here. And give me a moment to set things up here. This will do, I guess. No, we'll... No. There we go. There's a spreadsheet. I'll bring it up for you guys in a moment. Change this to the URL, and we'll do this. There we go. And let me do this. We'll set this to something like that. Actually, let's make sure it's nice and easy to read on stream in case you're watching on mobile or what have you. I mean, I guess I don't know if it's still easy to read, but hopefully it's easy enough to read. So Mission 26, 007 Nightfire for the Windows PC, developed by Gearbox, has been completed. And we have completed it on 2024-03-27. Final time, 8 hours, 26 minutes, 57 seconds. So a little longer than the console game, but not by much, an hour. When I wrote down the time after the last stream, I thought like, wow, we're past the time of the console game, and we have one stream left. So I was expecting there to be like an hour or, you know, hour and a half, 2 hours left, but no, it was like 30 minutes left. Completed the game on Agent Difficulty. That's pretty much all there is to say about this. There was no bronze or medals, or technically there was scoring, but the fact that the score screen just like whips by in 2 seconds and you can't even stop to look at your rank and rating kind of renders it pointless, in my opinion. Oh, we did it. That means we can mark this as green. And the next game. After 007 Nightfire, the next game is 007 Nightfire for the Game Boy Advance. So let's stop to take a look at that for a brief moment before we go back to doing some more spreadsheeting. Current game, or I guess our completed game, number 26, 007 Nightfire for the PC. And Mission 27 will be, as mentioned, 007 Nightfire for the Game Boy Advance. Developed by JV Games, who I have zero familiarity with. From a brief glance, it does not appear that they developed any of the other Bond games before or after. So I don't know what we can assume or guess or speculate upon, but I'm looking forward to playing this for sure. The Game Boy Advance received its own version of Electronic Arts' original James Bond adventure Nightfire a few months after the game's release on console and PCs. Sharing the storyline, Bond must stop megalomaniacal industrialist Raphael Drake from achieving world domination, and general gameplay, first-person shooter. This version adapts a selection of levels from the other versions for the handheld's capabilities. Yeah, so it's a GBA FPS. I want to say the GBA had a pretty competent and, you know, probably stripped down and different in its own way, but I want to say a pretty serviceable incarnation of Doom. And, you know, the GBA definitely has some games with 3D graphics or 3D-esque capabilities that are kind of surprisingly decent. And I'm sure there are other first-person shooters as well. I think with anything, when it comes to 3D games or FPSs or that kind of thing, it can work on just about anything, provided that the game doesn't, you know, provided that the ambition of the game doesn't grow beyond the capabilities of the hardware or software. You know, there's first-person shooters on 16-bit consoles, some of which are pretty okay, some of which maybe not so much. And, you know, the GBA should be perfectly capable of handling one that's built for its specs. I'm really intrigued to see what it plays like and what sort of... how the various aspects of these two games translate to the GBA version. I would suspect that it's going to stick closer to the console game. But I think the levels in this, like, the PC and console games are simultaneously different in a lot of ways, while also being surprisingly similar in places. So it's entirely possible that the GBA kind of has its own third interpretation of certain missions and levels and stuff. But I mean, obviously the map layouts aren't going to be one-to-one with either of them. But you know, are there going to be levels that feel like they are equivalent to either version, or is it going to feel like its own separate thing? I'm curious and looking forward to finding out. Gabsy94, greetings. Games Bond Marathon is a good idea. Appreciate that. That's what I thought. That's why I decided to do it. And we've been going for about a year and a half at this point. We started in October 2022. I was about to say 2012. We haven't quite haven't been doing it for quite that long. But October 2022 was the 60th anniversary of Dr. No. I thought that was a good opportunity to kick things off. And in the time since, we have completed 26 games plus 4 bonus games, and we have 24 games to go plus however many bonus games get unlocked. And we're entering an exciting era because the next several games are going to be, even though we are in an era of Bond games that were pretty popular and well known, the next several games are going to be games that I think most people have not played. Game 27 is Nightfire for the GBA. And if anyone here in chat has like played or, you know, experience with any of these games, feel free to chime in. Mission 28 is 007 Ice Racer for mobile phones, based on Die Another Day, which means that we will be doing a movie night for that movie in the not-too-distant future. Mission 29 is 007 Hover Chase, which is kind of a different vehicular action game for mobile. And then the GBA version of Everything or Nothing, because it released first. So it's not until Mission 31 that we get to Everything or Nothing for console. Game features an original story with over 30 missions. That's exciting. That probably means the missions aren't fucking an hour long. I'm looking forward to that. But let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Mission 27, Nightfire for the Game Boy Advance is up next. up, Father Axe Keeper? Got a picture of the GoldenEye ending, which also had James Bond will return. That's excellent. Thank you very much for that. Because yeah, that's going to be a slight bit of tedium to check back in on that for every game to see if it might appear. Not, you know, an insurmountable task, but anything to make it a little easier on me, I appreciate. Speaking of documenting and recording, let's hop on back here, because we of course have one additional important aspect to complete before we're fully done with this game, and that is to log the bond quotient for this game, such that we may calculate and scientifically determine which Bond game is not the best James Bond game, but which is the most James Bond game. I have devised a system in which we track aspects that are endemic to James Bond media and chart their prevalence in each of the games. Before I forget, I'm going to add this right now. Oh yeah, let me do this in an actual spreadsheet where I can edit it. So we're going to add a new column here. I'll say James Bond will return. And let me double check this. So go. Correct. All right, there we go. I know you can't quite see that, but oh yeah, I guess you kind of can. But we'll get back to it. So we have, I guess now that makes a nice even 30 categories. But these are not final. This is a work in progress. We will adapt it as we see fit, as we did just now. Adding or removing categories, or at the very least adding stuff, and then we'll perhaps make some adjustments later on. I'll check the other game endings. If I find anything useful, post screenshots in the Discord. That would be awesome. I would really appreciate that, Father Axe Keeper. Appreciate that. Which, by the way, gives me an excellent excuse to do some shilling. I do have a Discord. I noticed we have some people here who aren't perhaps regular viewers. If you want to join the conversation, if you want to talk about James Bond, post or watch Twitch clips, or join in on any upcoming movie nights, they are indeed hosted on Discord. And we will actually have another movie night coming up this weekend, which is not Bond related, but I'll talk more about that in a moment. So, the way Bond quotient works is, for each of these categories, the game can receive 1 point, and if an element is present, it's 1 point. If it's not present, it's a 0. And in some edge cases, we give half points for something that's like kind of, sort of, or maybe something that doesn't quite live up to the specifics of the category, but you kind of want to reward it somehow for its effort. We kind of play those by ear a little bit, and we see what makes sense. So let's just go through the list, and I'll explain whatever may need explaining as we get through each of the categories. Nightfire features gunplay. Yes. A lot of it. Oh yeah, that's right. I can't edit in this window. There we go. There's a 1. Fisticuffs. Technically speaking, yes, you can punch people. There's melee combat, so that counts. They're definitely gadgets. And I gotta say, this was probably one of the less obnoxious gadgetry like experiences in a Bond game, at least in an FPS where you have to like toggle between stuff. Having a button where you basically So the way it works, like, you use the scroll wheel to scroll through your inventory, but you have two separate inventories, one for weapons and one for gadgets. And even though, like, you have to cycle through things, the actual swapping is instant. There's just an animation of you pulling out the weapon or the gadget. But in a lot of the other versions, or sorry, a lot of the other games, whenever you swap or cycle through weapons, you have to go through the full animation before you can cycle to the next thing. You can never, like, cancel or abort. But in this game, whether you are swapping between weapons / gadgets, or you are toggling between the weapon wheel and the gadget wheel, all of these things are instant. So even though the UI is a little bit iffy and makes it slightly less intuitive than it might need to be, compared to any of the previous past several games, the gadget swapping was actually much less annoying to deal with. The best so far, for sure. So gadgets, yes. Driving car. So this is not specifically talking about whether there is driving gameplay. This is more about does the game depict Bond and his driving skills. I can't recall if there were any, like, cutscenes or, like, moments where you drive that were kind of lifted into the game. Like, there's a part where you go to Drake's HQ where you're, like, smuggled in via the truck or whatever, but I don't think Bond is driving there. I think probably when you leave Mayhew's estate, I want to say, do you, like, catch up with Kiko at the end of the level and the two of you go in the car and drive away? Because that is what leads to the office level. That's, like, all I can think of, but I don't know how much of that even really happens on screen, and certainly it's not like a lot of action car chase stunt driving or anything, which, to be clear, it doesn't necessarily have to be that to qualify. I'm gonna leave this one blank because I'm not sure. Whenever there's stuff like that I don't really know offhand, that I want to go back and double check, I prefer to leave it blank than typing it in. If I type it in as a 0, I'm gonna, like, trust that it doesn't happen. But if I leave it blank, I might want to double check. Sail away in the boat, which had converted from a car. We just never saw it. Well, that would be later in the game anyway. And I don't know, because when we go to the island, the whole scene with Q where he introduces the car, you go, like, Q is basically not present in this game, I feel like. He yells at you over the radio a few times, but that scene I think is missing. Because you, like, yeah, you leave with Allura and then you just, you know, hard cut to James Bond getting out of a rubber raft and then, like, being briefed over the radio that Allura's been kidnapped somehow, even though you went there together. So that's the other thing, like, driving, like, if it's fully off screen, it can't count. Like, obviously, there's plenty of games or films where we might imagine that Bond may very well have driven somewhere, but we're not going to say that we get to see him drive a car if we don't get to see him drive a car. And I feel like it's the same thing about the boat. So I think I don't think there's really any vehicular proficiency on display. Because it's funny how that works out, because, like, obviously there are things in the console game where you drive the car and there's the plane and everything. And any time in this game where you were kind of rubbing up against the edges of that stuff, they just, like, cut it all together. So there's no parts where, like, oh yeah, this section, there's a whole driving level in the console game, but in the PC game, that section is just dealt with through cutscenes. Like, they just cut it out altogether instead. So I don't think there's really anything that qualifies as driving. And by extension, I don't think there's any car gadgets really either, right? We don't see anyone else drive a cool car. I mean, hell, there's the airplane escape. Like, Allura does a bunch of driving, and Zoe flies a plane. But I don't think Bond is, like, in the driver's seat for any of it. So let's move on. Charm and Smarm. A poorly defined category that basically tries to determine whether the game makes a valid attempt at recreating the typical tone of Bond's dialogue. Sometimes it can be the tone of the narration or other dialogue, but mostly it's about, like, do they capture the spirit of Bond's sleazy womanizing, or just, you know, his bad puns or what have you. And there's some really fucking bad puns in this one. And I think he kind of there's a little bit more of it because there's more dialogue in this game than in the console game. Drinking, we just saw it right there at the ending. There's an actual vodka martini showing up in the ending. That's good. Stunts, I think we could definitely say this, because there's parts where, you know, we had the fucking Mission Impossible 4, you know, magnet climbing on the skyscraper. There was some parachuting in cutscenes. There's the part in the island level where you jump across cliffs, and even Allura makes a daring jump mid-gameplay. Like, I was pretty impressed. So, there's maybe not as many or any individual standout, like, key stunt sequences or anything that would be, like, the equivalent. But I think that the building climbing one, if we were to imagine this being a movie, that would be like a kind of a set piece stunt. Gambling, I don't think had any real presence of any kind, did it? So that's a 0. Yeah, Bond commented on Allura's butt like 2 or 3 times in basically the same cutscene. Not known for his subtlety, I guess. But hey, seems to be working. Globetrotting, yes. And again, I think the tropical island aspect was so kind of wasted in the console game, and it is very much more noteworthy and notable here. We thought there may have been gambling, but it ended up being hors d'oeuvres. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, that was in the first level. Good call. We have, like, you know, there's technically slightly less globetrotting here because the Paris level is not in this game, but you know, obviously you have the Austrian mountain castle, then you go to Japan, and then you go to the tropical island, and I mean, technically you go to space. You have you know, you don't just trot the globe, there's space trotting as well. So I mean, that's definitely a full point. I still think, like, the broad strokes of writing a plot that has, like, key moments take place in different continents, like, all right, cool, they got that down. But I think really the castle level is pretty great in having the scenery that's, like, interesting and visually exciting with the outdoors part. And then the Japanese estate obviously is, like, trying extremely hard to be super Japanese, but not only does it not feel very authentic, it feels very, like, theme parky. Like, it doesn't, you know, there's no interesting environments or anything cool going on. And then you go to the office building, which has, like, literally nothing about it that makes it look or seem like a Japanese office, except there's some, like, random katakana or on some signs. And then you go to the power plant, which is supposedly just outside of Tokyo. And that level in the PC game was much shorter than in the console game. And in the console game in particular, it's just preposterous to imagine that that's supposed to be Japan, because it just literally looks like Poland or, you know, whatever, Eastern Europe. But then at least you get the little tropical island stuff, which again in the console version barely is sort of visible. So I think there's, even if they on paper have, like, a plot that goes to all these places, I think games overall, Bond games have been, like, pretty iffy on, like, delivering really, you know, these extravagant establishing shots of making you feel like, oh, this is an exotic location, this is so cool that they decided to set this here, and like really making use of the location within the theme. And I think especially like for a game, right, you kind of want to how do I phrase it, like you want to squeeze as much out of it as you can. I mean, the most they do is like, well, we're in Japan, so now you're fighting ninjas or whatever. There's nothing like particularly interesting or mechanically distinct or unique that justifies, like, once you're in an office, the office could have been in New York, it could have been in Istanbul, it could have been in whatever, you know. There's nothing about it that makes it feel like, oh, it's so cool, it's this Japanese setting. I think that the tropical island stuff, having like the cliffs and the caves and that part of it, like that's something, right? You justify the specific location, and of course the whole underwater thing. And I think there's a lot of games that could do much more with that kind of stuff. That's what I really would like to see, because I feel like that's, you know, the movies, they don't necessarily, it's not like super gimmicked like what happens in the scenes. Oh, I just activated the timer. I guess I've been doing that a few times. Well, it doesn't really matter. We can just I can just do that. But there's generally some kind of, you know, touristy, culturally like interesting thing, or, you know, like obviously you have Live and Let Die with the sort of voodoo stuff, and like, you know, there's purpose to its setting. And I think a lot of these games they could do a lot more to incorporate that aspect, and that's something I'm curious to see if we will ever get to experience. Moving on, M briefings. Well, they're brief, but they do happen, and I feel like even some of that feels a little stripped down compared to the console version. I give the console version praise for not having these like tedious text things in between every single level. So there's just a couple of briefings, because you'd have like 2 or 3 levels that are sort of part of the same mission, where Bond wouldn't be like traveling back to MI6 or get briefed in between. So you get the briefing, you do those levels, and then you kind of get out of there, and then there's another briefing for the next leg of the plot. And this game is similar in that regard, but I feel like there's like slightly less of them. Next, I'm actually a little unsure, because Q briefing, I want to say that there's at least some Q contacts you. Like there's parts of the levels where he, like the radio chatter, where you get those like radio jump scares where the game just go like super suddenly and loud. You just, oh shit, and then, you know, M or Q or Allura or whoever's talking at you. That definitely happens, but I forget how much, if at all, there's like Q actually briefing you on stuff before a level. But I want to say that there is some of it, just not very much. Because in the console game, you have the whole section where he kind of introduces the car and briefs you on that. But that's not the only briefing from him in the game either. So I want to say there's probably a one. But I think I to be sure, I'd really want to double check. Because I think, well, I was gonna say, because I think the stuff, the incidental dialogue during a level, like that, I wouldn't count that. But, you know, I think that's still kind of in the spirit of things, like him telling you how gadgets work or what you're supposed to do. I would probably count it in other games, even if it didn't have like a briefing screen. So I think all around, it's probably fair to put a 1 here, like 0.5 maybe. You know, I'll leave it blank, because I think the Q briefing stuff, to a degree, it's also like, do we get the video game version of the classic Q briefing scene from the films? And him just radioing in to yell stuff at you doesn't really translate that either. That's not the most kind of faithful way of doing that. Even though it doesn't have to be a scene that plays out the exact same way, it doesn't feel like it captures necessarily that aspect and the relationship between the characters and such. So again, I'll leave it blank. I'll need to probably double check the footage to see if I feel like it's worth a full point or not. Q Branch as a location or an institution is definitely not featured in the game, so that's a 0. Moneypenny showed up for a good couple of games there, but hasn't been present for a while, interestingly. Bond, James Bond, I believe he introduces himself at some point at the party in stage 1. I think he says it multiple times. I think he probably introduces himself to Allura as well. I think he said it multiple times in the console game. I'm not sure if all of those were present here, but I'm fairly sure that it at least was a thing. And the Bond theme is, of course, featured. The music's, I want to say, the same maybe as the console game. I don't really recall. Maybe not. But the Bond theme is like credited in the manual and everything, so it's absolutely there. I think we had the console game's menu music, which is amazing, did feature as music in one of the levels, because I remember hearing it and going like, wow, now we're just hearing the menu music. Which isn't the Bond theme specifically, but it's kind of incorporating it. But yeah, the Bond theme is present. Theme song, yes. It's a little weak, but there is a theme song for the game that plays over the opening sequence and in the main menu and whatever. So, that definitely counts. I mean, it's the same as the console version. Same with the gun barrel opening actually happening. I'm confused. I'm surprised looking at the score here, because I feel like we discussed this 0.5 here last time. Opening credits. Maybe it's because the theme, yeah, I was gonna say, because I in my mind we landed on a 1, because even though the opening sequence is very short and it doesn't actually have credits in it, the fact that it has like the vibe and everything, like, I wanted to reward that. But maybe I was like weighing between a 0 and a 0.5. It might also have been the theme, I don't know, because I feel like, yeah, it's not fully what it should be as far as a proper opening credit sequence. But I guess looking back, you can't really see it on the stream layout, but I'll go up here. So GoldenEye, I gave a 0.5 for the opening credits because it has the it doesn't really have opening credits, but it has like the movie, like the classification ratings board screen that's like fake, and then it has like the in the attract mode where it shows all the characters. So it has like an opening bit, but it doesn't really evoke the specifics of the classic Bond opening from a film. Tomorrow Never Dies, of course, does use the actual opening sequence from the film. Octopus, it has a lengthy animated opening. Stealth Affair as well, fully animated opening with credits that like seamlessly transitions into the opening scene of the game. The Spy Who Loved Me, I think, has like there's like a fake VHS thing. There's like an opening, something to kind of set the mood of getting into like the cinematic aspect of it, even if it doesn't quite evoke the movie. So I think it's fair. Like, we've been pretty stringent in only giving a full point for like an actual opening that has actual credits. I think the reason I would want to be a little stingy here as well is because we don't know how this is gonna all like pan out over the course of the rest of the games. If we get like really proper opening credits with full credits and they're like full 2-3 minute openings, that's going to be deserving of a point, and it's going to be, in hindsight, this giving a full point to this might seem a little generous. So I think we'll, at the very least, the PC version and console version should obviously get the exact same score because it's the same opening. So I guess I can see how I arrived at that, and I think that's fair enough. Here's an interesting one. Product placement. The console game had the cars very prominently. They're not in the PC game. I don't think Bond's PDA or his grappling hook phone or really anything else is branded. So I think out of all these kind of modern-ish Bond games, I feel like this is a rare one that does not seem to have any product placement that I can remember anyway. I don't recall seeing anything in the credits either. Just the songs. GoldenEye had the VHS copy of the movie you had to pick up for a mission as a secret tape. I mean, it doesn't really... it doesn't exactly fall under the purview of this, I think, or what this is supposed to represent. The funny thing, though, I'm assuming that's one of the secret levels, because it sure didn't happen when I beat the game. Because I didn't play either of the secret levels. In any case, I think that's it wasn't one of the bunker levels. Okay. Oh, maybe I guess you're supposed to do something, and it's like if you look at it, you can see that it has like a GoldenEye cover. I mean, it's also, I guess I just forget shit, so maybe we did notice it and talk about it. I see. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a 0 for product placement in Nightfire. Let's find the window again. We can do a little scrolling here. Bond in Peril. Yes, of course, that's pretty much the same scene as it plays out in the console game. Pico knocks you out with a trank dart or whatever, and you get brought back to the office HQ where Dominic Pardy gets pushed off the building. RIP. And then you have to do the full action level, blasting your way through the office to, like, get out of your conundrum. That entire level, you're in fucking peril. Yeah, Bond likeness. Of course, we have Pierce Brosnan's likeness. Sexy ladies. Yeah, there's a lot of them. There's at least one sexy lady, comma, evil. Bond's dick powers, I want to say, are on fairly full display. Arguably even more so in this version. Because the aforementioned Dominique, you in the console game, there's an opening prologue level where you rescue this girl. She's being chased, so you have your sniper rifle from a helicopter and you shoot out these cars that are chasing her, and then you drop down with the helicopter and grab her onto the ladder, and then you like drop down into your car or whatever. I forget how that transition happens exactly, but you're driving the car and it transitions into a driving level. And then at the end of the level, it's New Year's Eve, it's very romantic, you have a little drink, whatever. And then you meet her again in the next mission, which is like the first real mission, the castle party mission. But in this game, that prologue level doesn't exist. So you go to the castle, you meet up with her, and like, I think they barely even greet before they start like making out. Which is like pretty funny without the context of that scene. But yeah, there's a lot of flirting and a lot of women kind of throwing themselves at Bond, despite very, I wouldn't say minimal effort on Bond's side. What's up, Oshawott? Welcome. We finished Nightfire PC. Turns out the final level was very short, so we are doing our due diligence here of documenting all the data to calculate the Bond quotient for this game. Henchmen, sure enough, we had to fight Virgil. We even got a proper boss fight in this game. Pico is kind of a henchman. We do have the proper villain. We have arguably the finest of all villain layers of every Bond game so far. I was very impressed. And James Bond will return. Indeed. And just because, of course, I was gonna say we made the effort. Father Ashkeeper made the effort to check this does in fact show up in GoldenEye, we'll give that game a point for this as well. And this is going to kind of ruffle a few things up here. Because, of course, this is a brand new category that we just now added that is not going to be accounted for in any of these scores. Now, I think most of these will have a 0, but there could very well be a couple here that will have a point here. So, none of these are to be considered final regardless, but it's worth noting that this is going to throw a little bit of a wrench into the works. How did I like the game compared to the console version? I've been talking about it a little bit, and I can give a recap as soon as we wrap this up, so I don't get too sidetracked. What's up, Doom Noob? Yeah, we're just about ready to get to the final score here. Well, I say final, but as you can see here, I call this the raw bond quotient because this number is simply a sum of all these previous categories, and as of the latest added category, the maximum score is 30. And Nightfire, I believe, is the #1 ranking game at 25.5, the console Nightfire. However, this is not fully reflective of the final bond quotient. First of all, let's see where Nightfire PC ends up. Pretty high, but definitely missing a few things from the console game, I would say. 21.5. It's definitely missing some of the vehicle stuff, which kind of hurts it. And there's the Q briefing thing, which I'm a little bit unsure of, but I think probably it should get a point for it. So it's still a pretty high score, but not in the upper tippy top. It's like it's wrestling there with another 5 or 6 games or so. The preliminary final score, sort of. So the thing is, right now, this is simply a sum of all these categories. However, in order to calculate this fairly, the values of each category needs to be weighted based on how important or prevalent they are in the films. So what I will do, and we've already started doing this for a small handful of films, but I will go through every Bond film at some point or another before everything is said and done. And I will check off this same list in each of the movies. And we will make sure that elements that are present in most or all films are valued higher than elements that are only present in some films. So for example, the gun barrel sequence, I think is safe to assume, is going to be in just about every Bond film. That means that a video game that incorporates the gun barrel sequence should be rewarded for having incorporated something that is key, that's something that's present in every film. And conversely, a game that does not incorporate the gun barrel, like, we can treat that as a, you know, a serious omission, a serious, you know, derelict in duty of adapting James Bond. Whereas car gadgets, for example, obviously there's some films that feature quite famously gimmicked cars with all kinds of stuff, but it's not something that's in every film. And I think there are some of these things that we can have a vague sense of how frequently they are present. But I think the villain's lair, for example, like, that seems like such a typical Bond thing. But I reckon there's probably plenty of Bond films that don't really have a memorable lair. The villain might have an office, they might have a headquarters, and I think some of those are going to have to be, you know, just have to determine whether we feel like it counts as a lair or not. But because I think a lot of those things you would make assumptions on, it's all the more important that we actually collect the real data so we can get some empirical statistics to not judge things by our gut. This is, of course, you know, the whole idea, to scientifically measure and determine, right? So that also means that some of these categories are a little bit weird. Like, I do want to notice, like, the Bond likeness, the actor likeness, but at the end of the day, not only is that obviously not something you can compare with a film, because the Bond actor portraying Bond in a film will have their own likeness. But also, I really don't think it matters. There are Bond games that don't have an actor likeness, like the Game Boy game very prominently does not feature any kind of actor likeness, and it's the fucking, you know, it's one of the most Bond games, but it's easily one of the best Bond games also, and it doesn't, you know, it would not have been improved at all by having like a pixelated Game Boy Roger Moore on the title screen or whatever. I mean, I guess it would have been better if it had that. It would have been pretty great. But the presence or absence of such a thing does not really have any real impact on the game. It does not have an impact on how much of a James Bond game it feels like, and it certainly doesn't have an impact on how good the game is. So probably what's going to end up happening is the Bond likeness category is just going to be not really worth anything in the final score. Or maybe, you know, if we multiply everything with 100, that's just going to be multiplied by 1. So it's like not going to end up mattering exactly. But like I said, we're going to watch movies as they come up. So before we play 007 Ice Racer, we're going to watch Die Another Day. And when we watch that, I'll just keep this spreadsheet handy, or the equivalent for the movies, and just fill it in. And we're going to do a proper full series rewatch at some point, either kind of running, or, you know, by the time we get to the end of it, we might take a couple of weekends or something and just kind of burn through them. I'm not sure, but I'm going to want to watch every Bond movie anyway. We watched quite a few already. And we're going to be watching basically the upcoming Die Another Day and then the Daniel Craig ones, because Quantum of Solace, the console game, actually covers both Casino Royale and Quantum of Solace. So we need to watch both of those. And I guess that's it, because there's no like Spectre game. And I don't know if 007 Legends might have something with Skyfall, but obviously there's From Russia with Love, and 007 Legends features a bunch of older films that we're going to rewatch and whatever. So there's some that's part of the upcoming sort of schedule, but I do want to go back and make sure that we have watched, like, for the purposes of the spreadsheet and everything, but also just it's good fun, right? So there's going to be more Bond film movie nights coming up. And again, we will watch Die Another Day before we play Ice Racer, but I don't want to schedule it just now, because after tonight, we're going to take a short break from Bond, and we'll do some other stuff this weekend, and we'll probably get to GBA Nightfire, I would say, a week from today. So probably Saturday stream and Monday, we're going to do some different stuff, and then we're going to do Nightfire. But because I don't know how long that game is, or like, I don't want to commit to anything ahead of time, but it seems likely that we might want to watch Die Another Day, not this upcoming weekend, but the weekend after that. But of course, if you do want to join in and watch these movies together, just hop into the Discord. Make sure to join the movie night roll. If you go to the the announcements, whatever, welcome channel, there's a bot thing where you can just react with an emoji, and you will be assigned roles which will allow you to get notifications for announcements relating to streams or movie nights or etc. So yeah, that is it for Games Bond for tonight. We will return with more Bond. Games Bond will return, if you will, with more Nightfire. One last dance for the GBA. I'm excited. However, that doesn't mean the stream is over. We have plenty of more gas in the tank for stream goodness. However, I will be taking a break. We've been going for about 2 hours. So I'll be getting in a mild stretch, refill my beverage, take a few minutes to ponder what we're going to do next. Because we're going to be switching gears to something completely different, I think, and play something else, or some other stuff. In any case, I'll be back shortly, and we will we'll just see. We'll see what we do when I come back. See you guys in a little bit.